tonight's or this morning's webinar is all about product updates. So it's been a very busy few weeks at Seqera. Last week we had the Nextflow Summit Boston, which was one of our major kind of flagship events, and we announced and launched a lot of new things. So this webinar is kind of a bit of a recap, just to go over some of the major things which are new, which have come out in the past kind of few days. Try and give a holistic view and give you some pointers as to where you can kind of dig deeper if you're interested in any of these things. Just a bit of housekeeping to start off with. There's a chat which you're welcome to chat in, but if you want to ask any questions, please put them into the Q&A, and we've got 5 minutes at the end, and we'll go through any questions that come up. Yeah, this is being recorded at the moment, and the recording will be shared via email in a couple of days. So if there's anything we go over too quickly, you can go back and watch again at a later date. You've got 3 of us on the webinar this evening. My name is Phil Yules. I'm Senior Product Manager for Open Source at Seqera. And joining us, we also have Rob Newman, who's Product Manager Lead, and Mattia Bojo. Bojo, am I saying that right? How long have I known?
That's right.
I feel like I should have that nailed by now, but he's a Senior Product Manager at Seqera as well. So you've got almost the whole Product Manager team at Seqera on tonight's call. Some of the kind of messaging that we've changed around Seqera for the past few days, we're really trying to push that Seqera is about advancing science for everyone through software. That's kind of our take-home message. And we've got 3 pillars that we try and achieve that through. We're open source software. I'll be talking about some of that with Nextflow and MultiQC. We're very focused on open science community. Again, Mattia will be touching on some new announcements around this, and also very much end-to-end platform. So trying to encapsulate the whole journey of kind of bioinformatics workflows, and some of the features that Robert's talking about tonight are on that. So kind of quite a holistic view and very focused on open science and accessible science. Tonight, we're going to start off with Mattia, who's going to talk about the brand new Seqera Pipelines and Containers. And I was also going to give a rundown of the new Seqera Compute, which we're starting to open up. Then Rob's going to talk about Data Explorer and Data Studios, and I will wrap up with Nextflow and MultiQC most recent releases and what's new there. Then at the end, we'll have time for some live Q&A. So store up all your questions, put them into the Q&A as soon as you think of them, and we'll try and find some time for them at the end. With that, I will pass over to Mattia.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. As mentioned, we are going to go through a couple of announcements from the last summit. The first 2 are going to cover resources that we have recently opened up for the whole open science community, trying to make life of researchers and developers easier as much as possible, not necessarily tied to Seqera products, but just the research and life easier. The first one is Seqera Pipelines. The main goal is to help researchers find the pipelines that they need to do the research as fast as possible. In a nutshell, it's a collection of curated here being a very important word, high quality pipelines from public repositories. What we did was to scout the internet for a number of pipelines, repositories that had some Nextflow code inside in the order of the thousands, and some automated filtering to weed out whatever it's never going to work, at least not with Nextflow, not with Seqera platform. And then manually testing hundreds of them, applying across the company has been very much of a joint effort with experienced bioinformaticians from several different departments to actually try to download the pipeline, configure it, find test data if they are not available inside the pipeline configuration, try to build them if needed, configure and store them into the metadata of the pipeline, so that the catalog of pipelines that we are making it open for everyone to try out is guaranteed to work at least on the first try on Seqera platform on some testing data. We wanted to build on the best practices that have been developed, for example, by communities such as NF-Core, in which reproducibility is almost always guaranteed by the best practices implemented while developing it, including test data, test profiles. This is very important because it shortens the time a researcher had to spend to figure out how to build my research environment. If I want to analyze some RNA-seq data, where do I find the best RNA-seq pipeline that actually runs and that's actually useful for what I need? That was the goal, try to simplify the life of everyone, but not bounded only to one community, but let's try to see how much we can find around the internet, around different providers, so that there's a one go-to place in which you know that the things that are there are actually going to be working once you want to run them either in Nextflow or within Core CLI or within the Seqera platform. Since this is now live in seqera.io/pipeline, we can just see how it works, see how it runs. Here's the collection of, at the moment, 80 pipelines. It's a collection that's growing because the curation effort is ongoing, as well as the interactions with several different labs and institutions in which we are trying to ask for the missing information so that we can actually include some very, very valuable pipelines, but that we were not able to make it work on the first run. So you can filter by organizations, by keywords. What the use case that's most expected is, I want to run some sort of analysis, whichever one. I find a pipeline that's useful for me because I know where it is, because it makes sense when I read the papers and so on. And then there are two main use cases, actually. One is I just want to run it with the CLI of Seqera CLI or Nextflow CLI or an Core CLI. You just copy paste it and try to make it run. Or the other use case, which is more tied to the Seqera platform tool by itself, is I would like to add this pipeline and the configuration that's going to be running on the test data to some of my workspaces. How can it be done? When you land here, the first time that you land and you have not authenticated yet, I'm a couple of steps ahead. This is the interface you're going to see. So a user is coming in, and if they have an account on Tower Cloud or Enterprise, they can simply copy paste here one of the access tokens that can be generated under the avatar menu, and that's guaranteed to connect to the Tower instance, to the platform cloud instance, and that's going to enable you to load the pipeline in any of the workspaces you have access to. The good thing of this authentication method is also that it works also for enterprise deployment. So this is not only for people working on cloud, but also on enterprise. The only two additional data that needs to be added are the Seqera platform URL as well as API URL. Both of them are very easy to gather once you have a deployment there. Now, once you're authenticated, the interface lets you select the organization you may want to, as well as the workspace where you want to add this new pipeline, and the compute environment. Why the three things? Because you want to add something somewhere using a compute environment that can actually run. At the end of the day, you just define a name, enter the script, add a description, add the pipeline, wait for it to be created, and then you can go and see that it's there inside of your workspace, ready to be launched and executed. There's a minimal thing that I just want to share here is part of the curation effort. It's going through some of the advanced options and making sure that some test data are there and available for when you want to run the pipeline. This is very important, so you can have a smooth experience, and the pipeline will be actually running. It is important, though, that the moment that you want to switch this to a production usage, you actually have to go and check the configuration and making sure that the configuration is going to run on your production data and not on the test data. It's an easy change, but it's relevant to mention it. Yes, I mean, this is how we envision Seqera pipelines to be integrated within Seqera platform, and it's extremely fast. And it's extremely fast way to get to a viable, high-quality research environment in a few minutes. You just select the pipeline that you need, you add them, they are here, ready to run. You can test them. It shortens a lot of the time to value if you want to try out some pipelines. Yes, that's more or less everything I wanted to say about the pipeline, except that since this is for the community, we are extremely open. We have our vision of how this resource is going to grow, but we are very much open to collaboration, co-creation, feedback. So if you have any suggestions, please do so through the feedback.seqera.io. There are some dedicated categories for pipelines and containers, which I'm going to showcase in a second. We are very eager to know what you think about it, how it could be improved, how can it make your life easier while you do your work. And yes, another very important part to increase the coverage of this catalog to be as comprehensive as possible, there's a form in which you can submit information useful for us to add a new pipeline. As mentioned, we really want it to be working. So the information is geared towards how can we configure the new pipeline that you're suggesting and where can we find the test data. These are the two key important pieces for us to be able to include it here and then make it as seamless as possible, the integration with other tools. Yes, this wraps up the pipelines. The next step, the next resource that's been announced not long ago, are Seqera Containers. I'll just switch back to the slides a second to go through a little bit of the main touch points for this new resource. This is also geared toward the whole community, and specifically not even Nextflow community or pipeline community. It's really everyone who uses containers, because containers have been very instrumental to enable reproducibility in science, the possibility of actually being sure that the thing you want to run, they're going to run the same way everywhere, anytime you run them. There are a wealth of resources, registries available for almost everyone to try out with a static collection of containers. They are extremely useful and very, very interesting, but there are some limitations. What we wanted to achieve with this, it's improving flexibility and pushing a little bit the boundaries of what's possible and covering some use cases that they're still there and they are recurrent. For example, when a developer wants to maybe combine a couple of tools so that you can compress two processes one after the other in your pipeline so that it's only one, you need either to create a Docker file, then create the image, find the registry where to host it, wait for it to be available, and only then you can actually use it everywhere. It's time that we plan to save. And yes, in a nutshell, Seqera Containers, it's an on-demand container provisioning. It's using Wave, one of the open source products that we developed at Seqera, to actually run the heavy load of things, the actual building the containers, building the images, storing those images in a public registry called Web Community Registry that's guaranteed to be online and stable for at least 5 years from the first time you actually create an image. And the idea was not only to give flexibility in how you can create containers, maybe combining a number of different modules, but also having like native support to create images either in Docker or Singularity, as well as support for multiple architectures. So when you create an image, maybe you want to create it optimized for a specific processor architecture so that you can actually leverage the machine on which the container is running and actually get the benefits in terms of usually saving time while processing the same data. And as mentioned, this is to build containers. Containers can be used in a number of different places. Our first go-to place is always pipelines because, well, we come from Nextflow and that's where most of our workload is. But containers, they can also work for interactive analysis or for reproducible research environments to guarantee, let's say, stability and consistency across a team. Yes, I mean, same as for pipeline, it's available on Seqera.io containers. And we can give a quick look at how it runs. In here, we have a search interface. We have some suggestions of available modules that we can add. Now it's as easy as like searching for the new package that I want. Maybe I don't want these two sources. I really want to stay on Bioconda for today. I just add the second one, decide to pick the container settings and the architecture here, the one that I need for the moment, and it's fine. Once I'm happy here, I can add a number of different elements. I just click Get Container. In the meantime, Wave is building this container or checking the registry if this very same container already exists. If this container already exists, this is the container is already ready. And in any case, here you have an instantly available, stable URI that you can use right now, and it's going to be the same for all the time that this image is going to be available in the web container registry. At the moment, the bare minimum is 5 years, but there is no expiry date, to be honest, so it could be as well be forever. And just what we do here is not only you have a container ready, which is way more flexible than other alternatives out there, but we also thought about the developers and in general, the other additional details that you may be interested to. Because, okay, this is a very nice name, but it's not really informative to know what's inside. Here you have all the details. They are provided by Wave as well. And it's like the code environment file, how the Docker definition file is, all the build logs, so you can, if you need, you can go through everything that's happened since this image has been originated and configured, as well as, and it's really important for many use cases, everything that's built through Wave goes through a routine security scan, and here you have the full report. This is very useful if you need to check for known vulnerabilities and understand if you want to move forward or not. Is this high vulnerability that's flagged here acceptable for you or not? Try to be as transparent as possible so that the life is easier for the person who actually have to use the containers after all. Yes, I mean, in a nutshell, these are the containers. Some key questions are and answers are collected here. One of them is, I've mentioned it a couple of times because it's important to know how stable this thing is. All images are posted in Web Community Registry for at least 5 years, but there's no expiry date. It grants you stability for a long time to try out this container and be sure that it's actually doing what do you need. And yes, I'm pretty sure there may be other key questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them in the Q&A, but for the interest of time, I can move forward to the next part of the talk. We are wrapping up for the moment the contributions for the open science community and moving more towards some of the features about the end-to-end platform that we have actually been delivering recently. And my piece here is about the new offering, which is called Seqera Compute. It's available for private preview. You can sign up on a form, and we will do our best to make it available as soon as possible on cloud, on the cloud version of the platform. For enterprise, it's still a long way to go. But what is it, Seqera Compute? I mean, the idea is very similar as pipeline and containers, simplifying the life of scientists as much as possible and researchers. And the idea is enable people to focus on science without dealing on infrastructure by providing a scalable cloud environment that's managed by us. It builds upon our 10 years expertise of running and monitoring works of at several different scales across different clouds providers and so on. And the idea is Seqera Compute is going to provide a computer architecture, a compute system that's scalable, that automatically handles the compute, the storage infrastructure, the roles, the privacy, everything that takes a toll on the time on the infrastructure management and DevOps side, abstract it away, and provide an alternative if someone don't want or don't have the time to focus on all the infrastructure management. Again, the goal is streamline the workflow, make it as easy as possible to extract value meaning insights, science, results, reports, some pipeline that you need to run. That's one of the goals of Seqera Compute. I can go and show a demo on a local branch that we have. And
just to say, we're running a bit late, Mattia, but so anyone who has Q&A, just drop them in and we'll take that at the end. So
yep. Yes.
You've got a few minutes, so keep going.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'll keep it very short. Luckily, it's not as much of a change from the user point of view and by design. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible to switch from normal compute environment to compute environment and back. How do they look? Exactly like any other compute environment. How can a user create a compute environment? It's as easy as giving them a name, Seqera without a U, with a very original name. Then we click select the platform and the region, and that's about it. Meanwhile, Seqera is taking care of creating the compute environment, creating the needed credentials to handle that compute environment, and later on to grant access to external data repositories like your private buckets if you have any, or any other kind of data resources that you need. It's also creating, and now it's caching because I just created something, created the data, the buckets, etc., in which everything is going to run. So all the runs that I've already, that's done. That was fast. Anyways, this has been created before. It's a bucket associated to the compute environment we just created, accessible only to you, in which all the runs are going to be well executed, and all the results stored by default can be changed through configurations. From here, you can manage the results of your runs, manage the work directory, maybe get the access to log reports, and so on. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to run your experiments inside the platform. And for the interest of time, I'll keep it extremely short. It's as easy as using any other compute environment. It works for pipelines. These are hosted and run on a compute environment that's created with Seqera Compute, and the same goes for data studios. Data studios can run on Seqera Compute environment. And there's a very minor note, which I haven't mentioned until now. They are, for the moment, Seqera Compute is going to be based on AWS. So this is very important depending on where the data that you want to process are, maybe more or less interesting from the get-go. But let's say that combining compute, for example, with pipelines lets you have basically from zero to a fully functioning lab in 15 minutes. And that's one of the big value proposals for these new offerings that we are proposing for the community. And then I will pass it over to Rob about the new exciting news about Data Explorer and Data Studios.
Great. Thanks so much, Matthias. Some really big changes. And yeah, it's fantastic to see this all moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the Seqera Data Explorer and Data Studios. Data Explorer is now generally available. And for those of you not familiar with it, it allows you to browse and interact with remote data repositories from organization workspaces directly in the Seqera platform. It removes the need to copy large data sets from where you're running your workflows, and it allows you to essentially move your compute directly adjacent to the data. It supports AWS S3, Azure Blob Storage, and Google Cloud Storage repositories. And this removes the need to work with multiple CLIs when staging data for using in Nextflow pipelines or manipulating data after a pipeline run is completed. The buckets are connected automatically to your workspace based on the credentials in your workspace. And you can also add public buckets that you can explore directly in Data Explorer. You can also use Data Explorer to easily add data to your pipeline runs or monitor pipeline work directories so you can view intermediate files at runtime because it's directly integrated with the launch and run detail pages. Finally, within Data Explorer, you can preview and download pipeline input and output data. So for example, you can view Nextflow output files, you can view text files, CSVs, TSVs, you can preview PDFs, HTML files, and also image files. Do note that the file size for previewing in Seqera platform is 10 megabytes, but larger files you can download directly. So I'm going to actually switch to showing this. And this is in the community showcase. So if you have access to the cloud interface for Seqera platform, you can see this. And you can go in and you can actually investigate and drill down into specific directories. And you can choose multiple directories to download. Here I'm selecting in the left-hand side, and I can click download files. And this will ask me where I want to download them. And in the bottom right down here, we've got this little draggable widget that shows the status of downloading various files. So you see all of these files immediately downloaded. We can also add public cloud buckets. So we can hit this add cloud bucket, and we could add, for example, the 1,000 genomes public bucket. We don't need to add credentials because it's public, and we can just hit add. And now we have the 1,000 genomes bucket. We can go in, we can start investigating it, and we can also download directly using files, or we can download using code. And this pulls up the CLI commands that you would need to download directly to your local host. All right, that's Data Explorer. Moving on to Data Studios. Data Studios enables users to securely spin up interactive tertiary analysis or development environments like Jupyter Labs, RStudio, or VS Code. And you can combine it with your selected data, your compute environments, and your credentials already linked to the Seqera platform by just using simple point and click commands. This provides you with a seamless co-location of your data and analytics. And it's also a much quicker transition from your pipeline runs to launching interactive analytics environments. Like you don't need to manage and provision independent virtual machines, whether that's through EC2, and you don't have to manage all of the user and data permissions as well, which can get pretty complicated, as I'm sure you understand if you've done this before. You can perform downstream post-pipeline tertiary analyses, whether that's doing exploratory data analysis or whether you're training machine learning models, or whether you're just building an interactive dashboard to share with your colleagues using tools like Shiny or Streamlit. You can also easily troubleshoot Nextflow pipelines in VS Code by connecting your results and work directories and rerunning the pipeline directly within VS Code. The environments are standardized based on version-controlled Docker template images, and we're using Conda packages, and this allows for better reproducibility, versioning, and provenance for your environments. You can really easily share and collaborate directly in your interactive environments, and I'm going to give a little demonstration of that using a single click. Currently, real-time collaboration is only for Jupyter Labs and VS Code. We're currently working with RStudio, Posit, who's the parent company of RStudio, around licensing, because real-time collaboration within RStudio is a paid offering. So that's a TBD. Finally, your access and control to Data Studios is via your existing Seqera platform credentials and roles. There's actually a new Connect role specifically for Data Studios usage, and then creating and deleting Data Studio sessions requires the maintainer role and above. And Data Studios is now in public preview. It's enabled for every workspace in the Seqera platform, and I'm going to give a little demo of this. We've also got some early feedback from some customers here who have actually been part of the private preview for Data Studios. So here we have the Data Studios interface. We can see here I've got a Jupyter Labs, an RStudio, and a VS Code demo all running. We can see information about the compute environment and about the creator of the Data Studio session, and we can see its status. I can use this little kebab menu on the right-hand side, and I can go view details about the Data Studio session. And this gives me an optional description, the compute environment, and also outlines which data have been mounted using Data Explorer. Additionally, there's also checkpoints. Checkpoints are session persistence for the Data Studio session. So every time a Data Studio session is started and then subsequently stopped, a checkpoint is taken, which is essentially a snapshot of the environment of Data Studios at that time. So I can quickly add a Data Studio and say webinar demo, test studio, and I pick the compute environment associated with it. I can mount some data, and let's pick this 1,000 genomes that I've already added through Data Explorer. I can choose the number of CPUs and give it some, let's give it 8 gigs of RAM. And I hit add, and then it has this stop status, and now I can start it. Now we can jump to this already running Data Studio session. You can see here I'm already connected to it, and then there's another user that's me, which is an anonymous user. And here I can jump in. Oh, let me reload the page. Well, in the meantime, I can move to RStudios while that's loading. So this is the RStudio environment. You can see here there's some analyses that I've done on the left-hand side, and we've got plots that have been created here on the right-hand side. And then finally, the Visual Studio Code environment here is where I can actually troubleshoot or write my Nextflow pipelines and execute them. Okay, here's the Jupyter Labs notebook that's opened. And we can see here I can add some text. But also I have my anonymous user here on the other side, and you should hopefully see it updating as I'm writing. Here is my collaborative session. So as you can see, there's different users working collaboratively within the same environment. And on that note, I will stop sharing, and please feel free to add questions in the Q&A.
Right on time. Thanks very much, Rob. Really cool features to see with Data Studios coming in and everything there. I'm going to wrap up with just a few updates about MultiQC and Nextflow, both of which have had releases in the past kind of couple of weeks. So these are the kind of foundational open source tools which underlie much of what we do at Seqera. Nextflow itself has monthly edge releases, which are kind of the ones for testing out new features and sort of trying things out in the community and getting feedback. And then every 6 months we do a stable release. And so the one that does just come out is called 2404. is the latest stable release of Nextflow, which we kind of expect everyone to be putting into production. So this stable release then kind of scoops up everything that has come into the edge releases over the past 6 months, and also has some new features in it as well. Kind of one of the top kind of key features that comes out in this one is support for Seqera Containers, which was already kind of demoed so brilliantly by Mattia. So Mattia showed the web interface where you can go to seqera.io/containers, and you can kind of type in any packages you want and grab a Docker URI. But the underlying kind of backend for that can also be contacted directly, both through, there's an open source Wave CLI tool, so you can kind of run Wave, install it via Homebrew and request containers on the command line that way. And also via the Wave plugin, which is part of Nextflow, Nextflow can request containers for you. So with this latest version, if you put into a Nextflow config, I've got the Nextflow blog post here, by the way. I've got this in a tab, so I can show you the kind of the code examples. All you need to drop into your config then is wave.enable true. Tell Wave to freeze the package, which means kind of lock the built package in place and push it to a repository if necessary, and tell it only to use Conda. There's a question I'll get back to about custom Docker files. And if you do this, then Nextflow will suck up all the Conda declarations you have in your pipeline and store them in Seqera containers in this public repository and fetch them from there. So if you have a pipeline with 50 containers, don't worry, you don't need to go and kind of click all 50 of them manually. You can just do it in one shot with Nextflow. So that's really exciting. Another really major milestone in the development of Nextflow is the first iteration of a new syntax for Nextflow, which we're calling workflow output definition. And this is something that Paolo has wanted for Nextflow for a long time. This eventually will replace publish_dir, which is the standard way that Nextflow publishes result files. You have the work directories with all the intermediate files, but then the final result files go out via publish_dir. And the idea then with the new workflow output definition is that you have this new publish syntax within a workflow scope, and you kind of take channels, output channels, and you put them into a specific output syntax. And then there's a new block you can have at the top level where you can define where those directories are, and things like mode, which were previously part of publish_dir. And you can also nest multiple subdirectories under here as well and kind of build up a structure. This is a first iteration, it's liable to change yet, but we hope that this kind of provides a better, more scalable way to build up publishing in the future, hopefully with better provenance, and also unlocking things such as chaining of pipelines in the future. Two other new features that came about together actually started at the Barcelona Summit Hackathon in 2023 are things called Topic and Eval. So topic channels, and both of these came out of mostly NF core pipelines, which record versions from software. And so with Topic, now you can sort of tag output channels throughout your whole workflow with a specific topic tag, and then you can create a channel from that topic. So if I look at this example, I've got different processes and I give them the same topic identifier, and then I can say channel.topic, and it scoops up all of those outputs into one place, which rather than having to do many kind of mix operators and stuff to bring them all together. The second one is eval, and eval is basically runs a specific command at the start of your process. And this means that if you've got, if you want to do, for example, a -- version to collect the version from the tool, which is not really necessarily relevant for the actual script block, but is something you want to be running, you can do that into the eval block, and it kind of keeps the script block clean and also means it's more configurable. And so taken together now, we can make the syntax for collecting software versions very, very clean, where we can kind of use process eval, it's over here, it's gone off to the side, no, eval, there we go, and also tag that output with a topic, and then we can kind of pull all the versions together. And what was a lot of boilerplate code quickly condenses down into a quite elegant syntax. And you can imagine how this would be useful for other use cases as well. Another little small feature, but one that has been close to my heart. I think I requested this maybe, I don't know how many, maybe 4 years ago, and it's finally kind of come through to fruition, which I'm very happy about. There's a new syntax called resource limits. And anyone who's used NF core pipelines in the past will know that we have options such as -- max memory and max CPUs. And then in the config file, we had this kind of ugly function, which we would run all the resource requirements through to make sure that Nextflow is not requesting more resources which don't are available on the host system. Without this, if you ask for 100 CPUs and you've only got 10, then Nextflow would complain about it and crash. So we had our own workaround in NF Core, but now with resource limits, we can encode that specifically within the config file, and Nextflow will handle it in a much more elegant manner. And hopefully we can remove these custom config functions from pipelines and again, clean up the syntax. So I'm personally very happy about that. Two more I've got on my list here. Job arrays is something that's been requested an awful lot, especially relevant for anyone running pipelines at very high scale, submitting thousands or potentially millions of jobs. Without this, Nextflow kind of submits each process task to the scheduler, and that can really kind of hammer the scheduler if there's a lot. With job arrays, Nextflow still treats them as separate tasks, so separate jobs, but it kind of bunches them together and submits them in arrays, which is something that makes sysadmins of clusters very happy. It's very, very simple syntax. You just throw it in process.array and tell it how many tasks it should group together. It does not affect, like if one job is failed and is resumed, it doesn't matter because they're still taken as independent tasks. They still run in the same way. So resume still works and all those things, but it hopefully makes for handling at scale a bit easier on clusters. And then the final one I wanted to draw attention to, anyone who has been using the Edge versions of Nextflow, this is not a big surprise. But makes me very happy because I wrote it, and that is colored logs. So I like my terminal to be nice and colorful. And now, when you run Nextflow with this latest version, you'll see that the ASCII output that you see as your pipeline runs has had a bit of a spruce up, and now hopefully is designed in such a way that it can kind of draw attention to the really important bits and relevant bits of the output here. So it's a bit easier to scan and keep an eye on. So hopefully we've had good feedback about this so far. So hopefully people will like that. If you're interested in the Nextflow release, then you can go to the Nextflow blog. If you go to blog, you'll find this one. It's the top one. And it goes through a few other things which I'm not mentioning today, with some links out to documentation and more details. So do have a read through there. And then, of course, if you really want to get into the details, you can go to GitHub to see the release notes where everything is listed. But you see it's a very long list. Been a busy team. Okay, next up, I'm going to touch a little bit on MultiQC. So MultiQC, we have a slightly more regular release cycle. We do a release aiming for roughly once a month, though it's been a bit slower just recently. And with MultiQC version 122, we've got a couple of kind of significant updates. There's been a lot of refactoring in this release, so it's not a particularly kind of shiny new feature thing, but it's as the headline number says, it's much faster. We have been improving the speed a lot over the past months. If you saw me give a talk in Barcelona last year, I was saying some similar things about how MultiQC was much faster at finding files, and this is new speed up. So this is 2.2 times faster compared to version 121. So just in that minor version, and also with much smaller memory footprint. So 6 times smaller maximum memory footprint, especially if you're using certain modules such as FastQC. And this is a real massive improvement. And some people who are running MultiQC on thousands and thousands of samples, usually if you're running it kind of with 10 samples, it runs in a few seconds, and performance isn't really something you think about. But some people do manage to have MultiQC processors that run for hours and use tens of hundreds of gigabytes of memory. So for those people, this will have a real measurable impact. And this was through a community contribution. So we're really super helpful and really happy about that. Two other things. We've refactored a lot of the backend to use Pydantic, which is a Python library. So now when you're writing config files, they're validated much better. So hopefully makes it a bit easier. Things will fail silently less often. Actually helped us to find a whole bunch of bugs in the source code. We transitioned to using a different plotting library called Plotly recently. So, and in version 122, high charts is now completely removed. So we're now a completely 100% Plotly tool, which is a really great move. so far, we're very happy with that transition. And if you're interested in this, check out the Nextflow Summit talks from Boston last week, where Vlad gave a great talk about it and drew some attention to some of the reasons why we did that and some of the things it opens up. And then finally, one of the other things that we've done with the refactoring is it's helped us to enable a new functionality for MultiQC, which is to use it as a library. Now, we've got a few minutes before we go into the Q&A, so I thought I would jump onto the back of Rob's demo of Data Studios and do some stuff in Studios myself, and we'll see if this live demo works. So I've got one running in my bioinfo wizards organization, which I use for testing. And if I hop in here, you can see I've got a Jupyter Notebook. Now, I could kind of use Jupyter Notebook as normal, could do MultiQC, run whatever. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab this. This is an open repository, so MultiQC/example notebook. I'm just going to do git clone to fetch that. And when that's downloaded, you should see, here we go, it's appeared in the sidebar. And now I'm going to show how you can use MultiQC not just on the command line, but also in scripts in kind of a semi-interactive manner. And so here, anyone who's used notebooks will be very familiar with this. I can restart kernel and rerun all the cells. And I can kind of step through all these steps here and interactively explore the data rather than just doing a one-shot run, where I can import MultiQC as a library, fetch some test data here, which I'm doing within the notebook, and then kind of stepwise do the analysis that MultiQC would normally do on the command line. So looking through some results, and then I can kind of interrogate what was found, modules, samples, data sources, the data itself, available plots, and then say, okay, I want specifically this plot, and I want to do it in this way. And you can imagine how, as an analyst working with bioinformatics data, you can build custom reports very nicely with this, hiding some cells, writing detailed markdown notes in cells alongside the plots and so on, or auto or anything else. And also in Vlad's demo at the summit, he showed how you can use this same kind of functionality then to start spinning up interactive web apps. So he showed a demo of a Streamlit app, which is a Python library for doing this, which again parses data and generates plots, has Plotly integration, so it can tie into the Plotly usage in MultiQC really nicely. But because it's kind of running in that environment, you can add data interactively or edit data interactively and tweak things on the fly in a way that's just not possible with MultiQC. You can fetch all of this data and try it yourself via the MultiQC website. So if you go to multiqc.info and click examples, there's now one called Jupyter Notebook where you can go through and find this repository and try it all out yourself. And what I'm also really interested, this is, I think, going to be really powerful for people doing custom analysis of their own data, and also for people writing pipelines. If you take many NF core pipelines, for example, such as viral recon, what that does is it runs MultiQC to pass out some data. Then it has some custom scripts to kind of do custom stuff with that data, which outputs then custom content, which has been the classic way to get data into MultiQC that's not from a standardized source, and then reruns MultiQC. But you can see now you could do all of that within a single Python script now, which is going to be a much more elegant way to do it. You just write your script, pass some data, manipulate it, inject it, do whatever you need to do. And then you can take that runtime. And if you go to the end here, for this example, you can see right at the end, it still generates a report. So you can kind of do that within a pipeline, which I think is going to be a really powerful approach. Right, on that note, I should stop talking. Get carried away, sorry everyone. And just point to some of the things which are kind of coming up. So we've got a jam-packed event season in front of us, as always. If you're excited, like I am, at the idea of some of these data studios, you can find out more. We've got a kind of more detailed, in-depth webinar purely on data studios, and really kind of doing a deep dive on those, which is going to be on June 12th, which is registration is open for. And we've also got Nextflow Summit. So like I say, the Boston one happened last week. And all of those videos are now online. So if you go to summit.nextflow.io, you can click through to the agenda. And you can see all of the talks were recorded. So you can hop in, and if you missed Evan's keynote, you can go and watch the video, and it's all on YouTube and embedded there. And then if you're interested in coming to one in person, the next event will be in Barcelona in October, and registration has just opened for that. So if I go back to summit.io, you can see I can go through to the Barcelona site. There's both call for abstracts, so we'd love to see people give talks, and that's open at the moment. And you can also register with a 30% off early bird discount, which is open now for a short time, up until June 21st. Great. With that, I will we'll dive into the live Q&A and see if anyone's got any questions. I can see a few here from Anand, which is great. Right, so I'll read these out. Mattia, I'm gonna kick off with one for you if that's okay. So Anand asks about Seqera Containers and how this kind of feature you mentioned relies on Bioconda and PyPI. But what happens if you want to write your own custom Docker file rather than relying on something, say, in Bioconda?
The current answer is that it's not supported. We may as container as it is right now. I believe Wave have the ability to do that. So maybe it's an avenue of evolution, but it's not there yet. So at the moment, I don't have an answer from you from the container point of view.
Yeah, so you can definitely do it within Wave. So Seqera Containers is public, and because of that, we don't want to open it up to abuse. So we're limiting it to Conda deliberately. But if you use Wave and you can freeze containers to your own custom repository, you can very much use Docker files for that, and that's covered in the documentation. I haven't had time to read through your questions. What else have we got? One from Rob.
Yeah, we've got a backup question about a question saying, can users define and use their own Data Studio's custom containers? Right now, we do only offer the 3 template images, one for Jupyter, one for RStudios, and one for VS Code. But the plan for the next milestone for Data Studios is to allow users, our customers, to define their own custom container. So either using that base image template and augmenting it with additional Conda packages, and then we use our Wave augmentation service underneath the hood to create that container for you. Or there's also the ability to connect directly to the Seqera's containers application that Mattia showed. And there's also the ability to have your own container in a container registry and put that directly as the template image for Data Studios. But that's in the next milestone. We're currently working on that, and we're aiming to have that done by early autumn.
I've got another question, Rob, for you here. Keep the ball rolling with Data Studios. How long do Data Studios live for? Kind of when you click startup, what happens then?
Yeah, after you hit start, they live indefinitely. So there is a challenge there in that users could potentially get up and walk away from their keyboard. I mean, that is common because if you're actually analyzing or parsing really large data files, it can take a long time to do that. So it's not trivial to determine if it's idle. So what we've actually been thinking of is having a lifespan setting when you first create the Data Studio session. So in that configuration, you can define, say, 4 hours or 8 hours. And once that Data Studio session is then started, as that deadline approaches, there'll be a prompt that appears on the screen that says, hey, you're approaching the end of your lifespan. Do you want to continue with this session, or do you want to close it down? And if there's no response from the user, then it will be automatically shut down. And this is a way to control costs.
Sounds like my mobile app for banking.
Automatically logged out in 15 minutes or whatever.
Exactly. Every time I open it up, it says, oh no, you're not there. It's gone. We've got another question from Anand here about with Nextflow, with the topic channel feature, and where I was talking about how we can clean up the syntax for collecting software versions there. So there's a couple of questions in here. So at the moment, the demo I showed, I think, showed kind of fastqc -- version in that eval statement, which prints the version which goes into the MultiQC report or wherever you need it. The question is, does Nextflow also do all the necessary kind of string handling using sed or whatever to clean up that version? And the answer is no. It's too difficult to generalize that because every tool does something different. So the example I showed was kind of nice and simple, and the output from that tool is quite easy. But if you need to do any kind of magic with sed, then you'll need to do that within that eval string. Nextflow doesn't do anything particularly magic there. It just runs whatever command you give to it. So you're completely right. If you're using FastQC or something, you might need to remove some of the other prefix. You also asked, can be extended to show the version of the container? That's actually a really good question. I'm not totally sure how that would work. I would assume that you can pull the task.container kind of declaration from a configuration into the provenance. I'm not sure I've ever actually tried, so I need to double check. I don't want to say it's definitely possible because I'm not sure, but that'd be an interesting question to put onto the Seqera community forum, and we can follow up on that. And then there's also some questions about provenance here, which just kind of ties into it again. One of the things I would say about provenance is we've been quite actively working on a Nextflow plugin called NFProv in kind of recent months, really expanding what that does. It now has output which in several kind of community standard formats. There's RO crate, which is kind of particularly popular in Europe for data provenance purposes. And also more recently, we have added support for the biocompute object format, which is a US format, which is approved by the FDA. And that's something we're quite interested. There seems to be good uptake in the community around these. And again, last week, there was a talk by Jonathan who's I think one of the main authors behind BCO. So if you're interested in that format, go and check it out. And data provenance is something we're trying to beef up at the moment because we know how important it is to people using Nextflow. Right, did I miss anything? I think if no one else has any questions. Oh, sorry, I didn't scroll down. There's a couple at the bottom. No. Yeah, okay. So Anand says the question is specifically around how to save all the .command files. So with the .command files, you can scoop them up as an output. So you can kind of say an output channel should contain those .command files, and there are other ways kind of to work with it. But I think you're specifically getting at the fact that some of these files may not be available when the task falls over and crashes. That is something I don't have a solid answer for you right away. So again, I'll have to follow up with you after the call, because I would want to do some testing and things before committing myself to anything there, unless Mattia or anyone has anything to say on that topic.
No, can't help you, no.
How many people in the audience have watched the videos or were at the summit last week, out of curiosity? I've been going through the videos and trying to catch up. Some corkers in there. Right.
Yeah, I would say if you haven't seen the Data Studios demo that Rob, Simon, Florian did, that is a fantastic demo that shows the functionality around Data Studios, especially doing like live machine learning modeling. It's very cool.
Yeah, that was on the Friday, I think. So you scroll down as Practical Data Studios by Rob Simon, with a bit of help from the audience with Florian, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, really nice, proper end-to-end analysis in that one. I'm really excited to see. This is just the beginning, I think, for Data Studios. For many of the things we're announcing tonight, really, it's just the beginning. I think when we start to connect the dots between all these different services, we can start to build something really exciting.
And seeing how users actually interact with them and what they build will help guide us as well.
Absolutely. Great. In that case, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I hope this has been helpful. If you think of any questions after we wrap up, then feel free to kind of drop us an email or drop into the community forum. you know where to find us, and we'll be happy to follow up on that. But otherwise, we'll hopefully see you at the next webinar. Thanks very much.